Hello once again for another segment of our one-year Bible program. We're going through the Bible in 1 year, every day. Of course, I'm not being able to come at you every day and teach a lesson, but I'm picking one day out of the week and then I'm summarizing those teachings in order to inspire you and encourage you to continue your one-year Bible reading. Well, today we're in the Old Testament section of 2 Chronicles chapter 30, and we're actually on verse 21 in chapter 31, excuse me. So we'll be reading 2 Chronicles 31, verse 21, and it says that he, King Hezekiah, sought his God and worked wholeheartedly, and so he prospered. What does it mean to seek God and work wholeheartedly for God? What does that mean, wholeheartedly? I think the best way to summarize what wholeheartedness means is to think of its opposite, half-heartedness. And we all know what it means to work half-heartedly. We all know what it means to be engaged half-heartedly. Because if you remember back in your days of school, you remember going to class sometimes, and you remember not really fully paying attention to the teacher, not really fully engaged with whatever the subject was. That's half-heartedly. Or if you remember one time, I hope this isn't a lot of times, but maybe a few times where you would go to church and you weren't fully engaged with what was happening. You weren't totally listening to the sermon that was being preached. And that would be called half-hearted devotion on Sunday morning. So we understand what half-heartedness means. So if we take that and go to full-hearted or wholehearted devotion, we'll see what that means. And it means that you're fully engaged, you're fully pursuing God. You're not just going through the motions, you're not just spinning your wheels. You are actually seeking God with your whole heart, and you're fully engaged in whatever it is that you're doing in seeking God. It could be prayer. If you're praying, you're not being distracted by the television or the internet, or you don't have a radio on blaring on in the background, or you're not in some busy place in a public location where there are conversations going forth all over the place. You are not allowing yourself to be distracted, and that's what it means to be fully engaged in prayer, and that's what it means to be wholeheartedly devoted to God in prayer. Or it could be the Bible reading, if you're pursuing God through the study of the Bible, and I do encourage you to do that every day. In fact, take advantage of the organizational principles here in the one-year Bible. It tells you exactly what portion of the Old Testament, what portion of the New Testament, and what section of the Psalm and the Proverbs to read. So it really lays it out there very nicely. That's why I've been doing this for now over 10 years, and it's really helped me understand God's will and God's Word for my life. But when you're fully engaged in Bible study, you're not reading the newspaper at the same time. You're not glancing over at the television and keeping an episode going on the program on the TV. You have that turned off if you're fully engaged with God in Bible study. You're also not trying to carry on a conversation with somebody else about the Bible or about any topics, politics, current events, because that would distract you from the Bible. So when you're fully engaged, when you're wholeheartedly following God or pursuing God, you are reading the Bible, you are reflecting on the Bible, you're thinking about your life, you're thinking about the truth that's being taught in the Bible, and you're fully engaged. You're wholeheartedly devoted to God in Bible reading. Could be church. We spoke before about on a Sunday church service. Fully devoted, wholehearted devotion to God on Sunday morning would be coming to church and wanting to hear what God has to say to you that morning. Not worrying about all the different other things that are going on in the week ahead and planning out your week while you're in church, or problem solving while you're at church. Now that doesn't mean that God can't poke some ideas into your head and inspire you to do something or to go in a certain direction in life during church. It just means that when you're in church, you're there for the purpose of seeking God wholeheartedly. You're not there primarily for scheduling your next week. You're not there primarily for problem solving at work to get a jump up on Monday morning. You're not there to do this, that, or the other than seeking God and God's will primarily. So that would be wholehearted devotion to God. And this is what Hezekiah, it says, was doing. It says he, Hezekiah, sought his God and worked wholeheartedly, and so he prospered. God prospered him because of his wholehearted devotion. Now let me ask you a question. Would you characterize your relationship with God as a wholehearted devotion to God? Or would you categorize yourself more in that half-hearted devotion to God category? Well, most people are not fully engaged when they are pursuing God. They're not fully aware. They're not fully involved in seeking God. And one of the reasons that it's so hard today in our modern society is because we have so many modern distractions, technological distractions. We have the television. Now the television is a huge distraction. It's a huge temptation, and we're all tempted to watch way too much television than we need. We're all tempted to turn to the TV when we're bored. We're all tempted to turn to the television to get all of our information, all of our news, all of our entertainment, everything. And so for a lot of people, 5-6 hours of TV every day is not unusual. And so it makes sense that they would be distracted from prayer, from Bible study, and from other things in pursuing God wholeheartedly. But we have to resist that temptation to turn to the TV. Also, there's the radio that can be on in the background all the time. There is the new technological distraction called the internet, and surfing the web and looking at this website and looking at this and that. This is another form of distraction, and it can take us away from wholehearted devotion to God. And then there are other things in our world. Of course, there are the fast paces that we conduct our lives with. There are going here, going there, going shopping, going to work in the morning, coming back. Just all of the different things that can take us away from simple, wholehearted devotion to God. Now, in the ancient times, they had their own forms of distraction. I don't want to give the impression that we are the only people that have ever lived that have had distractions from following God wholeheartedly. That's not true. But I believe that it is harder today, because of all the different distractions today, to follow God wholeheartedly, and we have to make a more conscious effort to do it. If we're actually going to be following God wholeheartedly, we have to make a conscious effort to say, no, I will not be distracted by this or that or whatever it is in your life that is distracting you from a more wholehearted devotion to God. So ask yourself this question: what is it that is keeping you from wholehearted devotion to God? What is it that is keeping you from where Hezekiah, the king of the Jewish people at that time, was at? What is keeping you from where he was at, where he sought God wholeheartedly? He was not being distracted by this or that. And it says that God prospered him. Now that word prosper doesn't necessarily mean financially. It can mean financially, but there's a whole lot of other things in this life that we can think of when we think of prosperity, and we should think of when we think of prosperity. Our soul prospering, our mind prospering, our families, our marriages, our relationships. These are all things that are just as important, more important than our financial prosperity. So when God promises a prosperous life for us when we follow Him wholeheartedly, that doesn't necessarily mean in terms of money alone. It can mean all kinds of other things. So I encourage you, follow God wholeheartedly. I hope that you've gotten something out of this one-year Bible. Now we're going to be going back to Chautauqua Institution in our next few segments. So stay tuned, don't go away, and we're going to see you back there at the